Get those foster kids out of my house. Deanne's voice cut through the Thanksgiving atmosphere like a knife, silencing every conversation around the dining table. I watched my 3 foster children, Emma, 8, Marcus, 6, and little Sophie, 4, shrink in their seats, their eyes filling with tears. My name is Olivia, and at 34, I never imagined I'd be facing down my mother-in-law at what was supposed to be a family Thanksgiving dinner. But here we were, her face red with rage, pointing at my children like they were intruders rather than family. "Mom, stop it," my husband James said firmly, placing his hand over mine under the table. "They're our children." Deanne's laugh was bitter and sharp. "They're not anyone's children. They're temporary guests, and I won't have them ruining another family holiday with their lack of proper manners." I felt my blood boil as I looked at Emma carefully using her napkin, Marcus sitting straight in his chair just as we had practiced, and Sophie clutching her little fork exactly as I had taught her. They've been trying so hard to impress their grandmother, to belong. "The only one ruining this holiday is you, Deanne," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger churning inside me. I reached for my purse, my fingers brushing against the envelope I'd been saving for just the right moment. "This is my house," Deanne continued, her voice rising. "I get to decide who sits at my table, who enters my home. And I've had enough of these children thinking they can just become part of our family." James started to stand, but I touched his arm, silently asking him to wait. This was my moment. "Actually, Deanne," I said, pulling out the envelope, "we should talk about whose house this really is." Her eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" I removed the document from the envelope, the paper crisp and official. "Your father, Grandpa Joe, and I had a long talk before he passed away 3 months ago. He was worried about the family's future, about how you've been treating the newest members of our family." The color started draining from Deanne's face. She'd never known about my private conversations with her father, how he'd visited us every week, delighting in the children's laughter and progress. How he'd told me I was the daughter he had always wished you could be, seeing how James and I opened our hearts and home to children who needed love. "You see," I continued, sliding the property deed across the table, "Grandpa Joe made some changes to his will before he died. He left this house to me with one specific condition, that it would always be open to children who needed a home." The silence that followed was deafening. James picked up the deed, his eyes widening as he read. Even my sister-in-law, Amanda, who usually sided with her mother, was speechless. This is impossible," Deanne sputtered, grabbing the deed with trembling hands. "Daddy would never." "He did," I said softly. "He saw how you treated these innocent children. He watched you try to exclude them from family photos, heard you make excuses about why they couldn't come to family events, and he decided that his legacy would be one of love, not rejection." Emma, always the protective one, had wrapped her arms around her younger siblings. I saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes, replacing the fear that usually appeared whenever Deanne was around. "You have 2 choices, Deanne," I continued, my voice firm but calm. "You can either accept that these children are part of our family and treat them with the love and respect they deserve, or you can find somewhere else to spend your holidays. But either way, this house will be a home where every child feels welcome." Deanne stood up so quickly that her chair toppled backward. "This is ridiculous. I'll contest this. You manipulated my father, turned him against me." "Actually," James spoke up, "I was there for some of those conversations with Grandpa. He made this decision himself, Mom. He wanted his home to be filled with love and laughter, not judgment and cruelty." Looking around the table, I saw the shifting dynamics playing out in real time. Amanda was staring at her mother as if seeing her clearly for the first time. James's cousins were whispering among themselves, nodding slightly. Even Deanne's husband, Robert, looked embarrassed by his wife's behavior. "The children stay," I said firmly. "You're welcome to stay too, but only if you can open your heart and treat them like family. All of them." Sophie, my youngest, chose that moment to slide off her chair and walk over to Deanne. With all the innocence of a 4-year-old, she held up her hand-drawn turkey picture, the one she'd made especially for her grandmother. "Happy Thanksgiving, Grandma," she said softly, her small voice somehow filling the entire room. I watched as Deanne looked down at the child, offering her unconditional love despite months of rejection. For a moment, just a moment, I saw her harsh expression waver. The next few minutes would determine more than just who owned the house. They would define what kind of family we would be. And as I held James's hand and watched Sophie stand there with her artwork, I knew Grandpa Joe had made the right choice. The house would be a home of second chances for all of us. The fallout from Thanksgiving was swift and dramatic. Deanne stormed out that evening, dragging Robert along with her, but not before promising she'd fight this with everything she had. That night, I tucked my children into bed, reassuring them that they weren't going anywhere. Promise? Emma asked, her voice small as she clutched her worn stuffed rabbit. She'd been in 4 homes before ours, and I knew that look in her eyes, the fear of being sent away again. With all my heart, I whispered, smoothing her hair. This is your home now. All of yours. The next morning, while James took the kids to the park, I started going through Grandpa Joe's old study. He had left everything meticulously organized, almost as if he'd known what was coming. In addition to the deed, I found letters, photographs, and most importantly, detailed documentation of every conversation he'd had with Deanne about the children. She's making a terrible mistake, he had written in one letter, dated just weeks before his passing. My daughter has forgotten what family truly means. Perhaps losing this house will remind her. It's not about blood or status, it's about love. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda, Deanne's message spreading through the family grapevine. Mom's meeting with lawyers tomorrow. She's claiming you manipulated Grandpa Joe when he was vulnerable. Please be careful. I wasn't worried. Grandpa Joe hadn't just left me the house. He'd left me the truth. The following week brought the first legal letter, demanding we vacate Mrs. Deanne Morton's rightful property. My lawyer, Mr. Patterson, who had also been Grandpa Joe's lawyer for 20 years, merely smiled when I showed him. Your mother-in-law, he said, adjusting his glasses, seems to have forgotten that her father was of perfectly sound mind when he made these changes. In fact, he pulled out a thick file. He had himself evaluated specifically to prevent any claims of manipulation. He knew his daughter well. But Deanne wasn't going down without a fight. She started calling family members, spinning tales about how I had stolen her inheritance and destroyed her family. Some believed her, mostly the ones who had always viewed our fostering with suspicion. But others, including Amanda, began to see through the cracks. I found Mom's old diaries. Amanda confided during a surprise visit. She did the same thing to Dad's adopted cousin years ago, pushed her out of family events, claimed she wasn't real family. I never knew. I'm so sorry I didn't stand up for the kids sooner. Despite our best efforts to shield them, the children felt the tension. Marcus stopped asking to play in the backyard, worried he'd see Deanne driving past the house. Which she did, regularly. Sophie's nightmares returned, and Emma became fiercely protective of her siblings, watching every new visitor with wary eyes. But then something unexpected happened. The neighbors, who had witnessed Deanne's outbursts over the months, started showing up. Mrs. Chen from next door brought over her famous dumplings, telling the kids stories about how Grandpa Joe used to help her with her garden. Mr. Peterson from across the street taught Marcus how to ride a bike in our driveway, the same way Grandpa Joe had taught his own kids years ago. The house, which Deanne had kept like a museum, slowly transformed. Crayon drawings appeared on the fridge, tiny handprints in paint decorated the playroom walls, and the formal sitting room became a fort-building paradise. Each change felt like a victory, a step toward making this house the home Grandpa Joe had envisioned. One afternoon, while the kids were doing homework at the kitchen table, Robert, Deanne's husband, showed up alone. He looked tired, older somehow. I found these, he said quietly, holding out a stack of letters. Joe wrote to Deanne every week after you started fostering, begging her to open her heart to the children. She never even opened them. I took the letters, noting Grandpa Joe's familiar handwriting. Would you like to come in? The kids are working on their science projects. He hesitated, then nodded. For the first time, he really saw them. Emma helping Sophie with her letters, Marcus proudly showing off his solar system model. These weren't the unruly, ill-mannered children Deanne had described. They were just kids, wanting to be loved. She's wrong, you know, Robert said as he left an hour later. About all of it, Joe knew exactly what he was doing when he left you this house. That evening, as I watched the kids playing in what used to be Deanne's pristine living room, now comfortably warm with toys and books, I found one of Grandpa Joe's last letters tucked in his desk, Olivia, when you read this, you'll already know about the house. What you might not know is why. I've watched you and James love these children, not because you had to, but because you chose to. You show me what family really means. This house needs to be filled with that kind of love. Don't let anyone tell you different. The best revenge against hatred is joy. Fill these rooms with it. I looked up from the letter to see Sophie walking toward me, a slightly crumpled paper in her hands. For you, Mommy, she said proudly. It was a drawing of our family, all of us, including Grandpa Joe up in the clouds, smiling down. James found me crying over it later, happy tears this time. You okay? He asked, wrapping his arms around me. Better than okay, I replied, showing him the drawing. This is exactly what your grandfather wanted. We didn't know it then, but Deanne was about to make her boldest move yet, one that would force everyone in the family to finally choose sides. Deanne's bold move came on a sunny Saturday morning, 3 weeks before Christmas. I was helping the kids decorate Grandpa Joe's old Christmas tree, now our tree, when James got the call. She's what? He exclaimed, his face darkening. Mom, you can't be serious. After he hung up, he looked at me in disbelief. She's calling Child Protective Services. Claims were unfit parents living in stolen property. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Every foster parent's nightmare, someone trying to take the children away. But then I remembered something Grandpa Joe used to say. The truth doesn't need defending, it just needs revealing. The CPS visit came 2 days later. Deanne had apparently spent weeks building her case, claiming we had manipulated an elderly man, stolen property, and were providing an unstable environment for the children. What she hadn't counted on was our preparation. Our fostering agency stepped up immediately, providing glowing reports from our home visits. Mr. Patterson arrived with all of Grandpa Joe's documentation, including videos he'd recorded specifically to address his decision about the house. But the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source, Amanda. I can't stay silent anymore, she declared, standing in our living room as the CPS worker interviewed family members. My mother has always had a problem with any children she didn't consider real family. These kids aren't unsafe or unloved here. They are thriving. The only person causing instability is my mother. The CPS worker, Mrs. Torres, was thorough and professional. She interviewed each child separately, toured the house, and reviewed all documentation. By the end of her visit, her conclusion was clear. Not only are these children in a loving, stable environment, she stated firmly, but the allegations appear to be maliciously motivated. I'll be noting that in my report. That evening, as we sat around the dinner table, our family dinner table, the phone rang again. It was Robert. Deanne's leaving, he said quietly. After the CPS report came back positive, something in her just broke. She's going to stay with her sister in Florida. Said she can't watch her family betray her like this. I looked at my children, happily arguing over who got the last dinner roll, and felt a mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for the grandmother they'd never really know, but relief that they were finally safe from her attempts to push them away. Christmas came, and with it, a transformation of the house. Where Deanne had once insisted on perfect, untouchable decorations, we had handmade ornaments and slightly crooked paper chains. The formal dining room rang with laughter instead of criticism. Even Robert joined us, bringing presents for each child and looking younger somehow, free from Deanne's constant disapproval. On Christmas morning, as the kids excitedly opened their gifts, I found one more letter from Grandpa Joe tucked inside his old Bible. My dearest Olivia, by now you've made this house what it always should have been, a home. My daughter lost sight of what matters, but you never did. Love isn't about blood or birth certificates. It's about choice. Every day, you and James choose these children, and they choose you right back. That's what family really means. Take care of them, and let them take care of you. And remember, the best revenge against bitterness is joy. Love, Grandpa Joe. I looked up from the letter to see Sophie tugging at my sleeve, holding up her new stuffed elephant with pride. Marcus was teaching Robert how to play his new video game, and Emma was carefully arranging her art supplies, a gift from Amanda. James caught my eye across the room and smiled. We both knew that this was exactly what his grandfather had wanted, not just a house passed down, but a home filled with love passed forward. A week later, we received notice that Deanne had dropped all legal claims to the house. Amanda said she finally read Grandpa Joe's letters in Florida, finally facing the truth about herself. It wasn't quite a happy ending. Those rarely come in real families, but it was a truthful one. The house stands different now than it did under Deanne's reign. The walls have crayon marks at toddler height, the garden grows vegetables alongside the flowers, and every surface holds evidence of life being lived, messily and joyfully. Sometimes, when I watch the kids playing in what used to be Deanne's formal parlor, I think I can feel Grandpa Joe smiling. He knew what he was doing all along. He didn't just leave us a house, he left us the chance to show what family really means. And every time I hear Emma tell Sophie, "This is our home forever," I know we've done exactly what he hoped we would. We've made this house into something better than perfect. We've made it real.